This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Afreilichen! Tainus Esther, everyone. Well, we're going to, in the short amount of time we have, explore a very interesting aspect of the Torah and Purim, which was brought to the forefront by Hagoin Rav Chaim Michal Doiv Weissmandel, who was very instrumental in saving many Jews during the Holocaust. There's a book written, The Unheeded Cry, Min HaMeitzar, where he tried to save as many Jews as possible. He suffered very terribly during the Holocaust. He lost his whole family. He remarried, and I believe he had 5 children after that. But it was something that plagued him his whole life. He was the founder of the Nitra Yeshiva, which actually in his conception was going to be something quite interesting, where he was going to have a farming community, where the Talmidim would be farmers and learning at the same time. That didn't quite work out as he planned, but he was known, and I was not able to confirm this story, but Reb Michal Bar Weissmandel was one of the all-time great geniuses. There's a story about him that he was the one who sort of brought to the forefront the concept of Torah codes, where by skipping thousands of letters, equal skippings, it's called dilugei oisios. You take a letter, you skip 10,000 letters, you get another letter. He did this in his mind.
Wow.
Without a computer. But not like 3 letters. Oh, let's see. Yavai hamelech v'haman hayoim. You get it? Yud kei vav kei. Yavai hamelech v'haman hayoim. I'm talking about tens of thousands of letters he was able to skip in his mind. So I once heard a story, and I wasn't able to verify it, that he was once reading from a Sefer Torah, and all of a sudden the letters of the Sefer Torah jumped off the page and filled the room. He had an uncanny way of seeing letters, and that's how he was able to come up with these ramazim, which we're going to learn from very briefly. So this is a story that somebody gave me last year. Supposedly it's in the Sefer V'Haravna, although I was not able to find it there. But it's printed in some Torah journals that I came across. So here it goes. And we're going to see the story and maybe the corrected version from the Sefer of Rav Chaim Michal Doiv Weissmandel in the Pardes Chemed. He says like this. This is supposedly brought in the Maharavna of Hagon Rabbi Yitzchak Zilberstein, the Rav of Ramat Elchanan in Bnei Brak. Rav Yaakov Mordechai Greenwald says over that nowadays it became known the concept of the Torah codes, Bible codes, that sort of reveals that whatever takes place in the world is already predicted beforehand, encoded in the Torah. So he says that he was zoicha to have an association with Rav David Weissmandel. Actually, it should say Rav Doiv Weissmandel, who is known as the father of these codes. He was the one who found these secrets and these encryptions in the Torah, and he did everything in his brain without a computer. There's no way to explain it. There's no way to explain it. To skip thousands of letters, equidistance, there's no way to explain it. So one time he says, I went to him on Purim, and he asked me, Pal, did you ever count how many letters in Megillah Esther? We've already gone through the psukim. There are 166 psukim. Keneged what? Keneged the 119 words in B'Shalach. Vayavoy Amalek Vaylam Sober B'Fidim Vayom Roshal Yeshua B'Chalon Hashem V'Tzei Lachem Amalek Machar. That's 119.
In the lining on Purim.
And Kiseitse Zachar Eis 49 words. 119 and 49 is 166. There are 166 psukim Megillah Esther. Connected 166 words in the Torah about Amalek. But now the question is, how many letters in Megillah Esther? So he says, the guy Rabbi Yaakov Greenwald said, not sure. So he said, I counted them, and I found there are 12,196 letters. So I responded, that's great. What am I supposed to do with that? So Rabbi Weissmandel said, bring me a chumash, and you're going to see something incredible. Take the first aleph in the Torah in the word Bereshis, and count 12,196 letters. Communion, the Oisios, and the Megillah. you get Samach. Then count another 12,196. You get a Taf. Count another 12,196. You get a Reish. This is a remes to Esther in the Torah. How? By skipping the number of letters in Megillah Esther, which is 12,196. Says Rabbi Chol, the Weissmandel, is there anything not marumas in the Torah? Everything's in it. Said Rabbi Weissmandel with great hislavos.
But what's the significance of 12,196?
I don't know. We have to. Yeah, so many shurim this year. We got to leave something till next year. 12,196. Okay, so Rav Greenwald heard the word this Dvar Torah, and he was visibly moved. So he says, oh really? So what about Mordechai? Where's Mordechai in the Torah? So Rav Weissmandel says, the truth is, I'm not sure right now. Come next year. You see, I was mechavein. You can't do everything in 1 year. Come back next year, and we'll get Mordechai. Fine. The year passed, and I came Purim to Rav Weissmandel, and I said, "No, Rav, what's with Mordechai?" And he said, "Well, Baruch Hashem, b'siyat d'shmaya, I found Mordechai." Now, by the way, does anybody know the statistical probability of spelling out a word with intervals of 12,196? It's in the realm of impossible. It's so negligible that it's considered impossible statistically. Fine. Then we're going to see a story. So the Gemara asks in the Masechta Chulin, Mordechai ben Atar minayin, and the Gemara answers, Parshas Kisisa, Kach lecha b'samim roish mar durar, which the Targum translates mar dachia. Fine. That's like his name Mordechai, that he's compared to mar dachia. The Maril says that Haman is gematria chelbana. Chelbana is the bad smell of the Ketores. Fine. Check this out. Since Mordechai is alluded to in the words Mardorar, take the mem of Mardorar, count 12,196. Guess what letter you get to? Reish. Now count another 12,196. Daled. Another 12,196. Chaf. Another 12,196. You get Yud. So here we have a Kabbalah through Diluge Oisios, a remes to Mordechai. Fine. Reb Greenwald continues. The story doesn't end. That's right. You would have thought, okay, that's a good way to end before Purim. No. The story continues. Says Reb Greenwald, a few years ago, there was a very smart woman, very prominent lady, who went to a lot of Kiruv seminars, and she would argue with every rabbi in every seminar. She would have hundreds of questions, and basically the rabbis didn't know how to answer this lady. So the head of the seminar suggested that I invite the woman to our home. Fine. So she stayed in our home, and at the end of the meal, she asked all of her questions, and she said, look, the bottom line is, I don't believe in Tarman HaShamayim. It's impossible to say such a thing. It's impossible to say we have a document from God. So Rabbi Greenwald says, you know what? I figured I'll give it a shot. I'm going to tell her over the Megillah code of 12,196 of Esther and Mordechai. And I told it to her. She listened with astonishment. She got up and she went to her room. And she gets up in the morning. She looks like she hasn't slept in days. She said she spent the whole night on the computer trying to create a program to determine the statistical probability of these codes. And what she came up with was, Hi Sipra, Shezeh Hatchum Shala Af B'yoim Yoim, Livdoik Hastaburius Visatistikus. Basically, she's a statistician. Yeah? Fine. She says, in great amazement, she found it on her computer. She checked on the computer, Achuze HaHestabrus V'Hestistiku, Shedavar Kazar Yikra, V'ya Ramaz Haba Isam Diglugim, Uleizam Askan Hiyagia. She made a program to figure out what is the statistical likelihood to come up with this code. And she found out and discovered, Bilti Afshari. It's impossible. It's impossible from a statistical standpoint. And therefore she says, He amra behalam v'sima es hashos v'yisenu bebilbo muchlat. She ran out. Many years passed. I was at a wedding. Says the Greenwald, I came down from the chuppah, and a woman cried out to me. I said, how you doing, Rabbi? I said, who are you? Who am I? I'm Mordechai ve'Esther. So what? What do you mean you're Mordechai ve'Esther? She says, I'm 12,196. I said, what are you talking about? I'm the woman you told the code to. I realized that there was no probability, no likelihood that something like this could happen, unless it's Tarmin HaShamayim. You see this man next to me? This is my husband. We were both became Balei Tshuva. My husband learns in Koilel. My Yoladim are Tzadikim, V'tzidkarnios, Ad Hayom Hazeh. From where? From this code. Okay, guys? So now you're going to go home today. We're all going to become great Oisei Tshuva. Why? From the code of Mordechai Esther. Now the question is this true? Is this really the number of letters in Megillah Esther? And is it, if you put into a computer this number, are you going to get Aleph, Samach, Taf, and Resh? So I was very curious about this.
Looks like the pomegranate.
It's like the pomegranate. So, okay, everybody, we're going to now count. No, I'm not going to do that to you now. So I found the Sefer Pardes Chemed. Actually, I didn't find it. I want to thank my good friend, Rav Gedalia Schwartz. He sent it to me last year because I was very suspicious about this code. So this is the Sefer of Rabbi Michal Dov Weissmandel himself, where he writes his codes. So he writes, Remez l'Megillas Esther min ha-Torah minayin. In the pasuk, Kinei anochi sholech balach l'fanecha l'shmercha b'derech u'haviyacha l'hamakim asher achinoisi. If you count from the aleph of the word asher, after all, this is a pasuk that's very relevant to the Megillah. You count 4,037 letters, you get a samach. Another 4,037, you get a taf. Another 4,037, you get a resh. Esther.
This is in Megillah or in Torah?
In the Torah. Now the resh is 241 letters from Mordechai of Mardarar. Okay, from the Ois Aleph until the Ois Resh are 12,010 letters, which is the number of letters in Megillah Esther. So, according to Michal Ber in his book himself, there are not 12,196 letters in Megillah Esther. It's 12,010.
So it's off 186.
12,010. And the remez is, if you take the aleph of Asher, 437, 437, 437, 437, you get Esther. Now the resh is 241 away from Mordechai, Mardarar, and the total spaces that this code occupies is 12,010. Now you have the computer printout on the back of your sheet, in case you wanted to verify this. There's another remez to Esther. The resh of Vitzarti Estrecha. You skip 4,037, you have a tuf. Skip 4,037, you get a samach. 4,000, you get an aleph, so you have Esther backwards. There's another remez to Mordechai. Right, so it's 12,110, right? 12,110, so it's off by 86, right? Off by 86. So he says, the name Mordechai is also merumaz in the Parsha Mardarar. When you count from the letter Reish in the pasuk V'yata kach lecha b'samim Roish, you count 12,110. Lamafreya, you get a dalid, and then a chaf, and then a yud. Okay, so in other words, when you count from Mem Reish, and then 4,000, Dalet, 4,037, Chaf, and then the Chaf and Yud are together. Now here we go.
So did anybody question Rav Weissmandel? I mean, he's off. He's off by...
No, because the story probably there's something maybe not correct about the details of that story.
But the 12,196...
Don't tell the woman, though. Don't tell that woman who became a Baal Shuvah, you know.
We count the letters in the Torah from Bereshit.
Okay, so now we're going to see. So he says, I heard from Reb Shlomo Fisher, another remez. And the remez is based on 12,110. If you count from the Aleph, in the Pasuk in Bereshis, Vayomer lo yered b'ni imachem, ki achiv meis, v'hu levadai nishav, v'karo asem alecha, shatech v'varatem es, sevasi. And the reason why the remez comes there is because Mordechai and Esther came from Binyamin, and therefore it's alluded to there, the name of Esther. Because if an accident happens to Binyamin, then we're going to be in big trouble. So there is a remez of Esther with a dilug of 12,110. Now, what's interesting is, I can't tell you whether the story happened, and I can't tell you whether if you start from the first Aleph in the Torah, you get a samach after 12,196 letters. But that's the way the story goes. Okay. But the one good thing about this is adu lo yada, you have to drink enough that you don't know how to make these calculations, so it's a more lenient opinion of the amount you have to drink. Another remez. You ready? Oid remez b'tar Megillah. The pasuk v'af gamzo ispiros meretzev v'em loy masam l'gadam l'chazam v'risi dam yani Hashem l'kechem, and the Gemara darshans it l'chaloi sambi mehaman. You count from the letter mem of ma'astim 4 letters. No, 1, 2, 3. Gimel 4 letters, 1, 2, 3. Yud 4 letters, 1, 2. Lamed 1, 2, 3. And Megillah. It's a remez to Megillah, and it's also a remez to the Daled Prakim of Masechta Megillah. In fact, Rabbi Weissmandel says he has Ramazim in Kamat all the Sfarim of the Rishonim and on all the Masechtas. So these Ramazim that we have over here, he has Ramazim in all the Jewish books. But Mar Rabbi say, this is Megillas Esther. That Rizal says that the light of Megillas Esther is greater than any light that ever came down to this world. So I want to wish everyone that through the Kayach of Purim and the Megillah, may the Ran Shalom bestow upon you Yeshuais, Nachamais, Refuais, V'malei Hashem kol mashas libchem l'tova. Afrei lechem Purim.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.